Life is testing you in ways you never expected. Every setback, every betrayal, every moment of doubt, it is all part of an unseen war against your spirit. You may think the battle is external, that the weight of the world is crushing you from the outside. But the truth is, the real war is within. The storm that threatens to break you is not the chaos around you, but the turbulence inside your own mind. The Buddha once warned, "You will not be punished for your anger, you will be punished by your anger." And so it is with all suffering. It is not the external hardships that destroy you. It is your attachment to them, your resistance to change, your unwillingness to release what no longer serves you. You have tried everything to escape the pain. The distractions, the self-help tricks, the empty comforts that numb the symptoms but never cure the disease. You have screamed into the void, hoping the echoes will bring relief. Yet here you are, exhausted, brittle, one crack away from breaking under the weight of it all. Why? Because no one ever taught you the real secret. Resilience is not given, it is forged. The strongest souls in history did not survive by avoiding hardship. They became unshakable by transforming pain into power, by turning wounds into wisdom, by making adversity their teacher rather than their enemy. You have been taught to run from suffering, to suppress your emotions, to fight against reality itself. But the way forward is not in resistance, it is in mastery. Imagine facing the storms of life with the presence of a warrior, not flinching, not crumbling, but standing firm with an unshakable mind. Imagine turning every dark moment into fuel, every disappointment into discipline, every challenge into a sharpened blade. This is not a theory, this is survival. For the next few moments, you will uncover the lost teachings, ancient wisdom once used by monks, warriors, and seekers of truth. These lessons are not passive, they are weapons. And when wielded correctly, they will not just help you endure suffering, they will transform you into something greater than you ever imagined. The first lesson is this: master the mind, not the storm. Imagine a lone sailor caught in a raging storm. The waves crash against his boat, the sky darkens, the winds howl like ghosts tearing through the night. Fear grips his heart. His first instinct is to fight the storm, to control the sea, to resist the forces that are far beyond his reach. But he knows that is impossible. Instead, he does the only thing that matters. He grips the rudder, takes a deep breath, and focuses on what he can control. His mind, his hands, his direction. The storm will pass, but only if he stays steady. This is resilience, this is wisdom, and this is the foundation of an unshakable life. Most people believe strength comes from controlling their surroundings, fixing problems, forcing solutions, resisting difficulties. But true power is not about controlling the storm. It is about mastering the mind that faces it. You do not calm the ocean by fighting the waves. You learn to sail. Think about your own life, the stress at work, the conflict in relationships, the uncertainty of the future. Each of these feels like a storm, threatening to consume you. The natural reaction is to fight back, to grasp for control, to resist what is happening. But what if resilience is not about battling the storm, but about shifting your focus inward? A warrior does not try to change the battlefield. He sharpens his sword. Your sword is awareness. This is why meditation is not just a practice, it is a weapon. When you sit in silence, you train your mind to detach from the chaos. You become the observer rather than the victim. You learn to see your thoughts, your fears, your worries without becoming them. The pressure of society, the fear of failure, the endless comparisons that haunt you, these are external storms. They will come and go. But your mind, that is your rudder, and only you can steer it. Imagine waking up tomorrow and deciding that no matter what happens, you will not react impulsively. Someone insults you, you breathe. A problem arises, you remain steady. This is the power of mindfulness. The ability to pause before reacting gives you strength over any storm life throws your way. But here is the twist. Control is not about force. It is about letting go. The more you try to control every outcome, the more suffering you create. The sailor who grips the rudder too tightly will strain his arms, lose focus, and tire quickly. The one who learns to move with the waves, adjusting with patience, survives the storm. Life's hardships are no different. The moment you let go of your need to control the external world, you reclaim control of your inner world. If you doubt this, test it. The next time you feel overwhelmed, stop. Close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths. Instead of asking, "How do I fix this?" you ask, "How do I navigate this with a calm mind?" The moment you shift your focus inward, the storm outside loses its grip on you. So ask yourself, what external storm am I trying to control that is distracting me from steering inward? Write it down. Name the storm. Then remind yourself, you are not the storm. You are the one navigating through it. This is the first secret to resilience. The battle is not outside you. It is within. There is a force in this world that keeps people trapped, bound to an invisible prison they cannot see, yet they feel its weight in every moment of their lives. It is the need to be understood, the constant craving for validation, the desperate hope that others will see you, recognize you, accept you. This is the greatest illusion of all, the belief that you must be approved by the world before you can fully exist. And yet those who have truly lived, those who have tasted the raw power of freedom, they all came to the same realization. They did not need to explain themselves. They did not need to justify their existence. They did not need permission to walk the path that was already theirs. But most people never reach this understanding. They remain shackled, waiting for acceptance that will never come, seeking to be heard by those who have no interest in listening, trying to prove themselves to those who have already decided not to see them. This is why they suffer. Not because life is cruel, not because they are unworthy, but because they are looking for peace in the wrong place. The moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you stop seeking validation, the moment you step into your own power without hesitation, you will understand a truth so profound that it will shake everything you once believed in. You were free all along, but freedom comes at a price. It is not given, it is taken. And those who take it, those who finally break free, they must walk a lonely path at first, because the world does not reward those who refuse to conform. It does not celebrate those who do not need its approval. It fears them. It resists them. It tries to break them back into submission. But the ones who rise above, the ones who refuse to be controlled, they do not bend to this resistance. They do not lower themselves to explain why they are no longer seeking permission to be who they were always meant to be. They simply are. And in being, they become untouchable. This is why the wisest minds in history spoke so little. They knew that truth does not beg to be heard. It exists whether it is understood or not. A flame does not explain its heat. A river does not justify its course. A tree does not ask for permission to grow. And yet they do what they were meant to do, unaffected by the opinions of those who do not understand them. Imagine walking through a crowded street, voices shouting from every direction. Some call to you with admiration, some with mockery, some with questions, some with judgment. If you stop to answer every voice, if you pause to explain yourself to each person who demands to know why you walk the way you do, where will you end up? Nowhere. Stuck in place, drained by the endless need to be understood by those who will never truly see you. But if you keep walking, if you remain unmoved by the noise, if you trust that your path is yours alone and does not require explanation, you will go farther than most can ever dream. This is the secret that the strongest souls have always known. They do not seek to be understood. They seek only to be aligned with their truth, with their purpose, with the deep knowing that their existence does not need approval to be valid. But here is where most people fall. They fear that if they stop explaining, they will lose people. And they are right. Some will leave. Some will no longer know how to exist in your presence without the version of you that constantly sought their approval. Some will resist your silence, desperate to pull you back into the habit of justifying yourself. Let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Their misunderstanding is not your burden to carry. Because the ones who truly belong in your life, the ones who truly see you, they do not need an explanation. They will recognize your silence as a mark of strength, not arrogance. They will feel your presence without needing you to explain it. They will walk beside you not because you have convinced them to, but because they were meant to. There is an ancient story of a monk who was accused of a crime he did not commit. The villagers surrounded him, demanding that he defend himself, that he prove his innocence, that he fight against the false accusations. But the monk remained silent. When asked why he did not speak, he simply replied, "The truth does not need my defense." And so, while the world raged around him, he remained unmoved. Eventually, the storm passed. Those who were meant to see the truth saw it. Those who were not never would have, no matter what he said. And the monk? He remained at peace. This is how you must live. There will always be those who misunderstand you. There will always be those who demand explanations, who expect you to shrink yourself to fit into their limited understanding. Do not give them that power. Do not waste your breath on explanations that will never be enough. Do not lower yourself to battles that do not need to be fought. The greatest victory is not in proving yourself to others. It is in realizing that you never needed to. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you will notice something extraordinary. The noise fades. The weight lifts. The exhaustion of trying to be understood disappears, and in its place, something greater arises. Clarity. A clarity that allows you to see what was always there, that your worth was never dependent on the opinions of others, that your purpose was never meant to be debated, that your path does not require anyone's permission but your own. And once you feel that clarity, once you taste the freedom of living without the burden of explanation, you will never return to the smallness of needing to be understood. But be prepared. When you stop explaining, the world will test you. It will try to pull you back into old conversations, into old habits, into the exhausting game of proving yourself. Do not engage. Do not react. Do not waste another second on those who are not meant to walk with you. Because the moment you stop explaining, you will realize that most people never wanted to understand you in the first place. They wanted to control you, and when they can no longer do that, they will fall away. Let them, not with anger, not with bitterness, but with the quiet knowing that their chapter in your life has come to an end. Strength is not in how well you defend yourself. It is in how deeply you know that you do not need to. A storm does not explain why it rages. A mountain does not justify its height. The sun does not apologize for rising. And you do not need to explain why you are no longer who you used to be. Walk forward. Let go of the need to be understood. Trust that those who are meant to see you will see you. And those who do not, they were never meant to walk beside you. Because the truth is, you do not need to be understood. You need to be. And that is all the explanation the world will ever need. There is a great weight that lifts when you finally accept that you do not need to be understood. It is a realization that comes slowly, after years of trying, after countless explanations, after moments of frustration where you find yourself saying the same words over and over, only to be met with blank stares or deaf ears. And then, one day you stop. Not because you have nothing left to say, but because you have realized that the ones who were meant to understand never needed an explanation in the first place. Most people spend their entire lives trying to be seen, trying to be heard, trying to be understood. They believe that if they explain themselves well enough, if they say the right words, if they present their truth in just the right way, then finally, they will be accepted. But that moment never comes, because the ones who demand explanations are often the ones who have already decided not to see you. And the ones who truly see you, they do not need an explanation at all. Look at nature. The mountain does not explain why it stands tall. The river does not justify its path. The tree does not ask for permission to grow, they simply are. And yet humans, who are meant to be just as natural, just as free, trap themselves in endless conversations, seeking approval from those who were never meant to give it. But what if you let go of that need? What if you stopped explaining, stopped justifying, stopped trying to shape yourself into something more palatable for the world? What if instead you simply became? At first, the idea seems radical. We are taught from childhood to seek validation, to be understood, to explain ourselves so that others will accept us. But tell me this, how much of your life has been wasted trying to convince others of what you already know to be true? How much energy have you given to arguments that led nowhere? How many times have you silenced yourself because you feared the weight of misunderstanding? But there comes a moment when you must choose. Do you keep explaining, or do you walk away? Do you keep bending yourself into shapes that are easier for others to accept, or do you finally take up space in the way you were always meant to? There is an old story of a monk who lived in silence. People traveled from far away, desperate to hear his wisdom, to ask him the great questions of life. When they arrived, he said nothing. Some grew angry. Some left, calling him a fraud. But those who truly understood did not ask. They simply sat with him, feeling the presence of his wisdom without needing it to be spoken. This is how you must live. Let your presence speak louder than your words. Let your actions be your explanation. Let the way you move through life be enough, because those who are meant to see you will see you, and those who refuse, no amount of explaining will ever change them. There is an undeniable power in a person who no longer seeks permission to exist as they are. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you become untouchable. The world does not know how to control someone who does not need approval. They will call you distant. They will call you difficult. They will call you anything except what you truly are, free. But be warned, when you stop explaining, the world will test you. People will push harder, trying to pull you back into the cycle of justification. They will demand answers. They will expect you to shrink. They will resent the fact that you no longer seek their validation. Let them. Do not engage. Do not waste your breath. The storm will pass, and when it does, you will still be standing, untouched, stronger than before. Because the truth is, those who do not understand were never meant to walk beside you. And those who do, they do not need words. They recognize you by your energy, by your presence, by the quiet certainty that radiates from a person who no longer explains themselves. So let them misunderstand you. Let them question. Let them talk. It is not your burden to correct them. Your only task is to continue forward, unshaken, unbothered, free. There is a shift that happens when you stop explaining yourself. At first, it feels strange, like walking away from a conversation you were conditioned to finish. You hesitate, wondering if silence will make you seem cold, wondering if absence will be mistaken for weakness. But then something unexpected happens. You realize that the world does not collapse without your explanations. The ones who truly see you do not need them, and the ones who demand them were never truly listening in the first place. Most people waste their lives arguing for their own existence. They defend their choices, justify their dreams, and fight for approval from people who have already made up their minds. But what if you stopped? What if instead of explaining, you simply became? What if instead of seeking to be understood, you moved forward regardless of whether anyone else comprehended your path? The greatest mistake people make is believing that their growth must be validated by those who knew them before. They believe that they owe an explanation for every transformation, that they must justify every shift, every evolution, every moment of becoming something new. But the truth is, you owe no one an explanation for outgrowing who you used to be. The caterpillar does not send apologies to those who knew it as a worm. The river does not stop flowing to explain why it has changed course. The mountain does not lower itself to make others comfortable with its height. It simply is. And so must you be. But the world will not make it easy. When you stop explaining yourself, people will notice. Some will be drawn to your certainty, inspired by the way you move without hesitation. Others will be unsettled, confused by the fact that you no longer seek their approval. And some will try to pull you back, whispering doubts into your mind, reminding you of the person you used to be. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them create their own stories about you. It is not your job to correct them. There is a parable of a wise master who was falsely accused of theft. The people of his village demanded that he explain himself, that he defend his innocence. But the master remained silent. Days passed, and the people grew angrier. They spread rumors, they hurled insults, they tried to provoke him, but still he remained silent. Then one day the true thief was caught. The villagers, ashamed of their accusations, asked the master why he had not defended himself. He simply smiled and said, "A lie does not become truth just because it is repeated, and truth does not need defending to remain what it is." This is the power of silence. It does not mean surrender. It does not mean weakness. It means knowing that your truth stands on its own, without the need for validation. Think of the sky. No matter how many storms pass through, no matter how much thunder shakes the earth, the sky itself remains untouched. It does not argue with the rain. It does not fight the wind. It simply is. You must become like the sky. Because the truth is, the ones who demand explanations from you are often the ones who are most uncomfortable with their own path. They see your growth, your evolution, your rising, and it forces them to confront their own stagnation. And rather than change themselves, they seek to pull you back into a place they can understand. Do not go back. The moment you stop explaining, you will feel a new kind of power, a power that does not need to be spoken, a presence that does not need to be justified, a certainty that does not need approval. And in that space, you will realize what was waiting for you all along: peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing that you no longer need to seek permission to be who you are. So let go of the need to be understood. Let go of the habit of explaining yourself. Let go of the illusion that your worth is something that must be argued for. Your existence is not a question, it is an answer. And once you fully embrace that, no one's misunderstanding will ever shake you again. There is an old Zen story of a warrior who stood before a king. The king insulted him, mocked him, tried to provoke him into anger, but the warrior remained silent, his face calm, his energy unshaken. The king grew frustrated and asked, "Why do you not react? Why do you not fight back?" The warrior smiled and said, "If a man gives you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" This is the wisdom of those who have mastered themselves. They understand that not every insult must be answered, not every challenge must be met, not every attack must be defended against. They know that the greatest power is not in reacting, but in choosing when to engage. But here is where most people falter. They believe that by explaining themselves, by justifying their choices, they will earn respect. They believe that if they can just make people understand, they will finally be free. But the truth is, those who want to misunderstand you will do so no matter how much you explain. And those who truly see you, they do not need an explanation. A lion does not turn to acknowledge the opinions of sheep. A river does not stop to justify its path. A flame does not apologize for burning. And you were not meant to explain your existence. You were meant to become so undeniably certain in yourself that no explanation is ever needed. But make no mistake, when you stop explaining, people will test you. They will try to pull you back into the cycle of validation, of approval seeking, of proving yourself to those who were never meant to see you. Let them. Their noise is not your concern. Their doubts are not your responsibility. Your only task is to rise beyond it. There is something unstoppable about a person who no longer needs to be understood. Their energy shifts. Their presence becomes magnetic. They move through life untouched by the opinions of others, because they have realized that their worth is not something to be debated, it is something that simply is. Imagine walking through a crowded market. Voices call out from every direction, some praising you, some mocking you, some trying to sell you illusions. If you stop to argue with every voice, to defend yourself against every insult, to convince every stranger that you are worthy, how far will you get? You will remain stuck, drained, distracted from your purpose. But the wise, they keep walking. They do not pause for noise. They do not waste their breath explaining themselves to those who do not wish to understand. They simply move forward, and this is what you must do. So let them misunderstand you. Let them question you. Let them doubt. It is not your job to correct them. It is not your duty to be understood. Your only responsibility is to be so unshakable in who you are that no explanation is needed. And in that silence, in that certainty, in that refusal to explain, you will find what you have been searching for all along: freedom. There is a kind of peace that most people will never know. It is not found in being accepted, in being praised, in being understood. It is found in not needing any of it. The moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you stop justifying your existence to those who were never meant to see you, you step into a power so rare, so unshakable, that the world does not know how to handle it. People have been trained to believe that their worth must be proven, that their choices must be explained, that their lives must be validated by the approval of others. And so they spend their days defending themselves, chasing acceptance, begging to be seen. But what they do not realize is that true freedom is not given, it is claimed. You do not need permission to be who you are. You do not need validation to walk your path. You do not need understanding from those who refuse to see you. The tree does not explain why it grows. The river does not justify its direction. The sun does not seek approval before it rises. They simply are, and you must be the same. But here is the truth that most will never accept. When you stop explaining yourself, people will resist. They will call you cold, distant, arrogant. They will demand answers, insist that you justify your choices, try to pull you back into their version of who you used to be. Let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Their confusion is not your burden to carry. There is an old story of a warrior who walked through a village. The people mocked him, insulted him, tried to provoke him into a fight, but he remained silent, unmoved. A boy asked, "Why do you not respond?" The warrior smiled and said, "If a man offers you a gift and you do not accept it, who does it belong to?" This is the key. What you do not accept cannot touch you. The judgments, the misunderstandings, the accusations, none of it matters unless you choose to make it yours. Most people carry these burdens, allowing them to shape their identity, their actions, their self-worth. But the moment you put them down, you will realize they were never yours to hold in the first place. Think of the strongest people you know, the ones who move through life with certainty, who are unshaken by the noise of the world. They do not explain, they do not defend, they do not seek permission. And yet they are respected, not because they demanded it, but because they embodied it. Respect is not earned through argument. It is not won through explanation. It is commanded by presence, by certainty, by the quiet, unshakable knowing that you do not need to be understood to be complete. Imagine a flame burning in the darkness. It does not question why it exists. It does not ask for approval to shine. It simply burns. And those who need its light will come. Those who fear its heat will run. But none of it changes the fire. You must be like this. Let people misunderstand you. Let them question. Let them assume. It is not your task to correct them. Your only responsibility is to continue forward, to move with purpose, to become the fullest version of yourself, whether they understand or not. And in doing so, you will discover something extraordinary. The ones who were meant to see you will recognize you without a single word. Because the truth does not need explanation. It simply is. There comes a time when you must decide whether you will continue living for the expectations of others or if you will finally claim your own path. The world has conditioned you to believe that you must justify your choices, that every step you take must be explained, that you owe others a reason for becoming who you are meant to be. But that is an illusion. The truth is, you owe no one an explanation for your growth, your healing, your transformation. Most people will never understand this. They live their entire lives in the shadows of opinions, seeking permission to exist, waiting for approval before they take a step forward. And in doing so, they remain trapped in the fear of judgment, trapped in the expectations of others, trapped in a prison of their own making, with walls built from the need to be liked, to be accepted, to be understood. But the strongest people, the ones who truly live in their power, do not seek to be understood. They seek only to become. Imagine a river flowing through a vast landscape. It does not stop to explain why it moves the way it does. It does not justify its course. It does not ask permission to carve its path. It simply flows. And in doing so, it shapes the land itself. The wise move like this: effortless, unapologetic, unshaken by the expectations of those who do not understand their journey. But here is where most people falter. The moment they stop explaining themselves, the moment they step into their own power, they feel the pull of guilt. They worry that they are being selfish, that they are abandoning those who once walked with them. But here is the truth. Growth will always look like betrayal to those who refuse to grow with you. You must be willing to disappoint others in order to honor yourself. You must be willing to walk alone if it means walking in your truth. You must be willing to let go of the need to explain yourself to those who have already made up their minds about you. Because no matter how well you explain, No matter how much you justify, there will always be those who choose not to understand. And that is not your burden to carry. There is an old Zen parable of a master and his student. The student was desperate to be accepted by others, constantly explaining himself, seeking validation for every action. One day, the master filled a cup with water until it overflowed. The student, confused, asked, "Why do you keep pouring when the cup is already full?" The master smiled and replied, "Why do you keep explaining to those who have no room to understand? Some people will never have the capacity to see you for who you are. No matter how much you explain, no matter how much you try, their cup is already full, with their own beliefs, their own judgments, their own limitations. And so, you must stop pouring. You must stop explaining. You must stop waiting for them to see what they are not ready to see. But this is where courage is required. When you stop explaining yourself, the world will test you. People will accuse you of changing. They will say you have become distant, cold, unrecognizable. They will try to pull you back into old versions of yourself that were easier for them to accept. Let them. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. The sun does not apologize for rising. The eagle does not ask permission to soar. The ocean does not seek validation for its depth. And you do not need to explain why you are becoming more than what others expected. The moment you stop explaining, the moment you stop seeking approval, something extraordinary happens. The right people, the ones who truly see you, the ones who do not need explanations, begin to appear. The right opportunities, the right doors, the right paths open, not because you begged for them, but because you finally aligned with them. So let them misunderstand you. Let them question you. Let them fall away if they must. Your only responsibility is to walk your path with certainty. Because the truth is, you were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to become without permission, without apology, without explanation. There is a power in stillness that most people will never understand. The world teaches you that to be seen, you must be loud. That to be respected, you must argue. That to be valued, you must prove yourself over and over again. But the wisest beings in history did not fight for their place in the world. They simply became so undeniable that the world had no choice but to recognize them. Think of the greatest forces in nature. The mountain does not chase acknowledgement, yet it stands immovable. The ocean does not beg for attention, yet its presence shapes continents. The sun does not justify its warmth, yet without it, life would not exist. These things do not explain themselves. They are. And in their being, they command respect. You too must learn to be this way. But this is where most people struggle. They believe that if they stop explaining themselves, if they stop defending their choices, they will lose their place in the world. They fear that without constant validation, they will fade into nothingness. And so they fight. They argue. They try to force understanding from those who were never meant to see them. But here is a truth that few are willing to accept. Not everyone is meant to understand you. And that is okay. Imagine a candle burning in the darkness. Some will be drawn to its glow. Some will fear its flame. Some will try to blow it out. But the candle does not explain why it burns. It does not dim itself for the comfort of others. It simply exists. And those who are meant to find warmth in its light will do so without being asked. You must live like this. There is a parable of a wise teacher who was constantly challenged by those who doubted him. One day a man approached him and said, "Prove to me that your wisdom is real." The teacher smiled and said nothing. The man grew frustrated. "Explain yourself," he demanded. But still the teacher remained silent. Finally, the man stormed away in anger, convinced that the teacher had nothing of value to offer. The students who had been watching asked, "Master, why did you not answer him?" The teacher replied, "Because wisdom does not beg to be seen. Those who are ready will find it without force." This is the truth of life. You do not need to prove yourself to those who do not see you. You do not need to fight for understanding from those who are not ready. You do not need to waste your energy on battles that do not serve you. The moment you stop explaining yourself, you step into a new kind of power. You become unshaken by opinions. You become free from the need to be liked. You move through life with a quiet strength, knowing that those who are meant to walk with you will recognize you without a single word. But here is where the world will test you. When you stop explaining, people will push harder. They will demand justification. They will call you distant, arrogant, cold. They will try to pull you back into the old version of yourself that was easier to control. Let them. Their misunderstanding is not your burden. A lion does not lower its head for the comfort of sheep. A river does not ask permission before it carves through stone. The moon does not apologize for lighting the night, and you do not need to justify your existence to anyone. You were not meant to explain yourself. You were meant to become so undeniable that no explanation is needed. And the moment you realize this, the moment you truly embrace it, you will experience something most never do. Peace. The kind of peace that cannot be shaken. The kind of peace that does not seek approval. The kind of peace that comes from knowing that you are exactly who you were meant to be. No explanations, no justifications, no apologies, only presence, only certainty, only you. There is a deep and unshakable peace that comes when you finally realize that you do not need to explain yourself to anyone. It is not defiance, it is not rebellion. It is simply the understanding that your existence is not something that requires permission. The world has conditioned you to believe otherwise. It has trained you to seek validation, to crave approval, to shape yourself into whatever form is most acceptable to those around you. But the moment you step out of that illusion, the moment you decide that you will no longer justify your choices, you will feel something most never do: freedom. Most people never reach this point. They remain trapped in an invisible prison, bound by the need to be understood. They spend their lives explaining why they have changed, why they no longer fit into the roles assigned to them, why they can no longer be what others expect. But no matter how much they explain, it is never enough. Those who want to misunderstand them will continue to do so. Those who fear their growth will continue to resist it. And so they exhaust themselves, caught in a cycle that leads nowhere. But the ones who break free, they are different. They do not explain. They do not defend. They do not waste their energy trying to be seen by those who refuse to see them. They move forward, unbothered, untethered, unstoppable. Imagine a river flowing through a great valley. It does not pause to explain its direction. It does not ask for permission to carve its path. It does not turn back simply because others do not understand where it is going. It moves because that is its nature. It flows because that is what it was meant to do. And in doing so, it shapes the very landscape around it. You must live like this, but the world will resist. The moment you stop explaining yourself, the moment you stop seeking approval, people will notice. Some will admire you. Others will resent you. Some will be drawn to your energy. Others will be threatened by it. Let them. Their reaction is not your concern, because here is the truth. Those who demand explanations from you do not actually want to understand. They want to control. They want you to remain predictable, explainable, small. And when you refuse to give them that, when you walk away from their need to keep you bound, they will resist. But resistance is not your enemy. It is your confirmation. The discomfort others feel in the presence of your growth is proof that you are stepping beyond the limits they placed on you. The more they question you, the more you know you are leaving behind what no longer fits. And the more they misunderstand you, the more you know you are stepping into a version of yourself that no longer requires explanation. There is an old Zen story of a master and his student. The student, eager for wisdom, asked, "Master, what is the secret to peace?" The master said nothing. Instead, he took a jug of water and began pouring it into a cup. The water overflowed, spilling everywhere. The student, confused, said, "Master, the cup is already full. Why do you keep pouring?" The master smiled and said, "You cannot receive something new while you are still full of the old." This is the truth most people do not want to hear. They want peace, but they do not want to let go of the things that keep them from it. They want freedom, but they do not want to release their attachment to validation. They want to move forward, but they do not want to stop explaining themselves to those who refuse to listen. But you must decide, do you wish to be free or do you wish to be understood? Because you cannot have both. True peace comes when you no longer seek to be explained. It comes when you no longer feel the need to be defended. It comes when you understand that those who are meant to walk with you will never require an explanation. And those who do were never meant to walk with you in the first place. So let them misunderstand you. Let them question. Let them talk. It is not your burden to correct them. Your only task is to keep moving. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself, you will realize something extraordinary. You were never bound. You were never behind. You were never lost. You were always free. You simply needed to stop seeking permission to step into it. You were not meant to explain. You were meant to become. Imagine a river flowing down a mountain. It does not stop to explain its course. It does not justify why it carves through the land. It simply moves, adjusting when necessary, but never hesitating. It does not question whether it is flowing in the right direction. It knows that it is. This is the energy of those who no longer explain themselves. They do not beg to be understood. They do not wait to be accepted. They move with purpose, not because they seek approval, but because they have reached a place where approval is irrelevant. But here is where most people hesitate. They believe that by defending themselves, by explaining their choices, by justifying their transformation, they will finally be accepted. But the truth is, those who want to misunderstand you will do so no matter how much you explain, and those who are meant to walk with you, they will not need an explanation.